This is the story of Ethan, a nature photographer from Los Angeles who sought solitude after a difficult period in his life. He decided to spend 2 weeks completely offline in a remote, privately owned cabin deep within the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. The cabin was old, without cell service, and miles away from the nearest town. Ethan wanted silence. He got something far worse. For the first 4 days, the silence was a blessing. Ethan hiked, took photos, and read. The weather was clear, and the nights were filled only with the sound of crickets and the occasional owl. The sense of isolation was absolute, but comforting. He felt watched, but put it down to the wilderness. On the 5th day, everything changed. Ethan woke up to an oppressive, heavy silence. When he looked outside, the entire world was submerged in a fog, the color of deep cobalt blue. It wasn't natural. It was thick, clinging, and felt strangely heavy on his skin. He couldn't see more than 10 feet in any direction. Concerned, Ethan tried his satellite phone, a precaution he rarely used. Dead. He checked the radio. Nothing but static. He tried the truck. The battery was completely drained, though it had been fine the night before. He was trapped, surrounded by the unnatural blue fog. As the day wore on, Ethan noticed the silence was wrong. It wasn't the sound of isolation. It was the absence of sound. No birds, no wind, no insects. It was a suffocating void. He started hearing a very low, almost inaudible humming vibration, not with his ears, but deep in his chest. Ethan decided he had to leave. He took a flashlight and stepped out into the blue fog. The ground was wet. After only a few steps, he stopped. He looked down and saw 2 sets of footprints, his own and a fresh set of bare, unnaturally large feet that circled the cabin. They hadn't been there 30 minutes ago. He retreated inside, locking the door. Through the window, he stared into the dense blue mist. For a split second, the fog thinned just enough for him to see something outside. A colossal, dark shape, unfurling itself like a massive, wet canvas above the treetops. It was so big, it blocked out the sky. Then, the fog snapped shut again. Ethan stumbled backward into the bathroom. As he looked into the small, grimy mirror above the sink, he saw a message written clearly in condensation. Though no one had been in the bathroom since he arrived, it saw you leave. The letters were thin and sharp, almost clawed into the steam. The humming vibration from Chapter 5 grew louder, more insistent. It was now a low roar that rattled the cabin's single kerosene lamp. Ethan felt his teeth clenching involuntarily. The air pressure seemed to be dropping drastically, making it hard to breathe. The entity outside was physically pressing against his reality. Suddenly, the front door of the cabin was struck by something massive. The wood didn't splinter. It groaned in a deep, agonizing frequency that was neither wood nor metal. It was the sound of the colossal shape from the fog trying to unfold itself into the cabin's confined space. Ethan scrambled toward the back room. He glanced at a tiny high window overlooking the swampy area behind the cabin. Pressed against the glass, ignoring the blue fog, was a massive cluster of black, wet, compound eyes, like those of an enormous insect, but arranged in a chaotic, non-symmetrical pattern. They weren't looking at him. They seemed to be looking through him. Realizing the thing was everywhere, Ethan remembered the small crawl space hatch beneath the floorboards in the closet. He ripped open the hatch and slid down into the damp, cold dirt beneath the cabin. He pulled the hatch closed just as the main living room door finally burst inward with a sickening rip. Below the cabin, the humming was deafening, vibrating through the dirt. Ethan could hear the creature's immense weight moving across the floorboards directly above him. It wasn't walking, it was sliding, dragging itself like 1,000 tons of wet meat. He stayed absolutely still, buried half in the cold mud. Then the sliding stopped. Silence returned, heavier than ever. A single clear voice, ancient and echoing, whispered directly into the crawl space, right next to Ethan's ear. It wasn't in English, or any language he knew. It was just a series of numbers and coordinates, a mathematical equation that somehow felt like pure existential horror. Ethan didn't wait. He burst out from under the cabin and ran blindly into the dense blue fog, abandoning his truck, his camera, and his identity. He ran until the blue turned to gray, and the gray turned to familiar white mist. He finally collapsed on the highway, miles away, the humming gone, but the numerical sequence permanently etched into his memory. He never went back to the mountains.